Okay, welcome everyone. It's 10 o'clock to the MLAC August 6th meeting. As always, I'd like to start out with an affirmation. We would like to thank everyone for their time, effort, and participation in our work before us today. We want to recognize that it is very difficult and important work, and we appreciate and value the perspectives and professionalism that everyone brings here today. Thank you. Starting off with roll call.
Okay, good morning. Sarah Merrick.
Present.
Sarah Duckwall.
I'm here.
Co-Chair Strickland.
Present by video.
Ryan Hearn.
Present.
There he is. Margaret.
I'm here.
Stacy Levon.
Present.
Emily.
Present by video.
Co-Chair Priest is not with us today. Fiona, our newest member.
Present by video.
And Kim Schlesinger.
I'm present.
Director O'Day.
I'm here.
Hey, we have a quorum.
Excellent. So as always, we have a public comment section toward the beginning. I don't see anybody signed up. I see a lot of people in the room, but I don't see anybody storming the microphone. I'll give it just a moment. All right, so moving on next, we have review of minutes from May 7th and June 16th. Would entertain a motion if there are no corrections.
Seconded.
So I hear a motion and a second to adopt as distributed. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Kim?
I don't think I was at that meeting, the May 7th meeting. I was absent.
Okay,
I got it, Kim.
perfect. All right, moving on to department updates. Starting off, Workers' Compensation Board case law updates with, it looks like Lauren, and I see screen share started.
Thank you, Co-Chair Strickland, members of the committee. Thank you for having me today. Thank you, Terry and Baba. My update today is on a board case called Andrew F. Venatucci. So most of you are probably going to be very familiar with the topic of this case because it concerns the 2022 amendment to ORS 656-2681A concerning medically stationary determinations. Next slide, please, Baba. Thank you. So just as a refresher, the amended statute provides that a physician or nurse practitioner may not retroactively determine a worker to be medically stationary more than 60 days before the date of the determination. The 2022 legislation also included an applicability clause that explains that the amendments apply to all claims that exist on or arise on or after January 1st, 2024. Unless there has been a final determination before January 1st, 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. So turning to the facts of the Venatucci case, in this case, on April 6th, 2023, the worker's attending physician determined that the worker was medically stationary way back on August 22nd, 2020, almost 3 years prior. So the workers' compensation insurer closed the claim and awarded temporary disability benefits based on that August 22nd, 2020 medically stationary date. So before the board, the worker argued that the amended statute applied to prohibit the insurer from using that August 22nd, 2020 medically stationary date. Next slide, please, Baba. Thank you. So this case raised two primary questions before the board. The first was, Did the amendment even apply when the applicability date was January 1st, 2024, but the medically stationary determination was made in 2023? And the second question was, if the amendment did apply, what was the effect of the amendment's application on this medically stationary determination? Was the medically stationary determination completely invalid because the medically stationary date was more than 60 days prior to the determination? Or was the amendment intended to operate as a limitation on the amount of time that a physician could backdate a worker's medically stationary date? So in other words, could the statute effectively modify the medically stationary date to be 60 days prior to the date of the determination? Next slide, please, Baba. So on question one, did the amendments apply? The board concluded that they did. And the board acknowledged that the medically stationary determination was made in 2023, but explained that the claim still existed on January 1st, 2024. And because of the ongoing litigation about the medically stationary date, there was not a final determination before January 1st, 2024. Next slide, please, Baba. And then on question two, how do the amendments affect the medically stationary determination in this case? So the board looked at the text, context, and legislative history of the amended statute and concluded that it was not intended to wholly invalidate the physician's medically stationary determination. Rather, the board held that the amendment was intended to reduce the amount of time that a physician could backdate the worker's medically stationary date to 60 days. So in other words, the statute effectively modified the medically stationary date to be 60 days prior to the date of the determination. So in reaching this conclusion, the board noted that its interpretation of the statutory amendment was consistent with a Workers' Compensation Division rule that was adopted after the enactment of the statutory amendment, and provides that if the medically stationary date is more than 60 days prior to the date of the determination, the medically stationary date is the 60th day prior to the date of the determination. Next slide, please, Baba. So applying that framework to the Venatucci case, the board modified the August 22nd, 2020 medically stationary date to be February 5th, 2023, or 60 days before the April 6th, 2023 determination. And this case was not appealed to the court and as of now is final. Are there any questions?
No.
Margaret?
Remember what else?
Yes, thank you, Lauren. I'm wondering, was this an en banc case, number one? And were
Yes.
there any concurring or dissenting opinions?
Yes, great question. So members Uzi and Seha dissented, and they would have interpreted the statute differently. They dissented on two bases. First, they thought that regardless of the statutory interpretation issue, that there was insufficient information to close the claim in this case, so they would have found the closure premature. And then secondly, they would have interpreted the statutory amendment such that it would have invalidated the medically stationary determination.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Any other
questions?
Oh. Not seeing any. Scrolling through the list here. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up, I see Workers' Compensation Division updates with Terry.
Yes, I just have a couple rulemaking updates. We've been busy this summer. So rulemaking hearing to update OAR 436-100, the Workers' Compensation Benefits Offset, was held on July 7th. We are currently drafting the proposed rules, which will be filed in September. We also held a rulemaking hearing for changes related to House Bill 4040, which was held on July 23rd. The temporary rules were filed in April due to the emergency clause on the bill. There was no comment at the July hearing, which we expected because the rules were identical to the temporary rules. The permanent rules will be filed in September. And then a rulemaking hearing for House Bill 2800 from 25 that updated the worker leasing statute to the modern language of PEO is taking place today at 11. The permanent rules will be filed in October with an effective date of July 1st, 2027. There's been extensive stakeholder cooperation with this rulemaking, and WCD would like to thank those involved with this process. We have a couple other updates, but I'm gonna pass that off to other people if there isn't any question about the rulemaking that I just went over.
Not seeing any. Give it one more sec. Nope. A lot of heads shaking no, so please continue on.
Okay, so now I'm gonna hand it over to Katie Bruins, the WCD Deputy Administrator.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, Co-Chair Strickland, members of the committee. I'm Katie Bruns, the Deputy Administrator for the Workers' Compensation Division, and I'm here to give the annual SB 533 report on denials and terminations of come-along providers for calendar year 2025. I believe on the agenda it said 553, it's 533, just so everyone's clear. Before I get to the numbers, I want to briefly remind everyone what a come-along provider is. Under SB 533, when a worker is enrolled in a managed care organization or MCO, they can continue treating with their own provider, even if that provider isn't part of the MCO, as long as that provider meets the MCO's credentialing standards and follows its treatment and utilization requirements. Essentially, the worker is allowed to bring their provider along into the MCO. This helps maintain continuity of care and prevents workers from having to switch providers unnecessarily. Now turning to the required annual report, SB 533 directs the department to report all denials and terminations of these come-along providers each year. The report must include the provider type, the number of workers affected, the date of the action, and the specific reason for each denial or termination. For 2025, there were 3 MCOs operating in Oregon: Kaiser, Majoris, and Providence. Across all 3, only 1 denial or termination was reported statewide. It occurred in GSA 4, the Portland area, and involved a chiropractic physician. 1 worker was affected. The reason for the termination was that the provider's treatment did not follow the MCO's service utilization process. I'm happy to answer any questions or refer questions to our MCO specialist who's joined us virtually.
Great, thank you. Any questions from folks? Not seeing any. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And next up, I do see, I think, maybe back to Terry for a draft 2027 schedule. Yes, yep.
Yes, so you all received the 2027 draft legislative, the calendar for MLAC for 2027. I did want to let you know, our meetings in person will be at the Department of Revenue first floor. And our December 3rd meeting will also, that in-person meeting will be at the Department of Revenue. So you should be able to see it before the 2027 meetings. We are gonna change the Zoom platform to Teams in 2027, so there'll also be another change as well. If there isn't a need for a legislative meeting, we will cancel that meeting, of course. So it is there for your review.
There's no second summer of subcommittees hearing tour.
Oh, Chair.
See, if I say that now, then it won't happen. So it's all good.
Okay.
You gotta get it out now. Looks good. Do we have any questions about this one? Not seeing any. Want to thank you again to staff for all of your tireless work and efforts on that, and on our previous summer of subcommittees, and all the great work that was done there. Next up,
Chair?
Can I
Yes.
just stop you for a second? So
Sure.
if everybody's good with this, we're gonna go ahead and start putting them on your calendars now, okay? Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, great. Next up, I see an informational presentation. I don't have an individual starting off. I see a few folks approaching.
Good morning, committee. My name is Alan Pershbar. I'm Legislative Director for the Oregon State Firefighters Council. And to start off, we have online, the world is going to start us off, if that's okay.
Yes, please take it away.
I think that's me. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy to be here this morning. My name is Emerald Bogue, and I'm Chief of Staff for Governor Tina Kotek. I am sorry she's not able to be here today. I'm happy to be here in her stead. Across Oregon, and especially now, we hear from our firefighters of the dangers that they face each day. Firefighters suffer from health issues such as heart and lung disease, post-traumatic stress injury, Parkinson's disease, but the leading cause of death in firefighters is indeed cancer. In this severe fire season that we're having, our firefighters are literally on the front lines every day, risking their health and safety to protect Oregonians and the places that we hold dear. The risk is all around. Firefighters have now found that even their turnouts have PFAS, a well-known carcinogen, also historically used in firefighting foam. For those reasons and more, the World Health Organization has officially classified occupational exposure as a firefighter as carcinogenic to humans, meaning they find sufficient evidence that firefighting causes cancer in people. Our firefighters deserve to be protected. It's troubling that the federal government recently expanded their cancer coverage to a higher level than we have here in Oregon, such as covering mesothelioma and thyroid cancers, while Oregon does not, yet. We have the opportunity to change this, and we should. Honoring firefighters by recognizing the science and inherent risk is the right thing to do. We look forward to supporting this discussion as it advances, and look forward to hearing more today and going forward. Thank you for your time. I look forward to listening to the presentation, and then I have to run. But please follow up with our office anytime if you have questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Back over to you all.
And thank you. Again, my name is Alan Ferschweiler. I'm honored to serve the 3,700 paid firefighters in the state of Oregon. Also a 25-year veteran at a large municipal department up in the north side of the state. Pre-9/11 hire, which isn't very common these days. And so one of the things that has changed a lot since 9/11 and everything else is climate change. And I won't get into that aspect, but I didn't think that ever we'd be deploying down to California to fight their fires, that we would have already have burned 2 million acres within the state of Oregon. And all those effects that have, things are changing, climate's changing, the job that we're doing is changing. Just last week, we had the Centennial Mills fire up in Portland, where we had 100 firefighters find that fire. The asbestos risk that we have will not be known for years and years and years, yet we had 88 firefighters that were exposed to it. Every day, the state firefighters, the firefighters of the state of Oregon have an increased cancer risk from the work that we do. Car fires, house lift fires, everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. In Oregon, we have 15 states throughout the United States that have full cancer coverage. Some states like Massachusetts enjoy it, California. We even have states like Oklahoma and Alabama that have it. We are one of the 35 that call out the specific types of cancers. And so the data that shows is that we get even the cancers that are presumed within the statute that we just got the information back, a presumed cancer, whether it be lung, brain cancer, all the 14 that we have, is still right now only approved at a 66% acceptance rate. And so we do have work to do on those. As we come before you, one of the reasons that we come before is a lot of what we're trying to do is be proactive in the approach that we take. And so we have a department that just did, and they're a little bit controversial because of the negatives that come out. So you'll have people that go and say, hey, I have this type of cancer. And then there's a bunch of testing that comes out that they have nothing. Well, 650 people took one of these live scans, is what they're called. 450 actionable items for those 650 firefighters. Over 10-digit members have had either thyroid cancers or thyroid surgery based upon that one live scan test. And so what we are telling people is that we have to be preventive. We have to get ahead of it. We don't know what cancers are out there, but I'll use myself as an example. You know, almost 26 years on the job. I wear hearing aids because I was on a truck for 7 years with chainsaws and everything else. Occupational injury, right? When I was 45, I was able to go and have some tests, colon tests, because of my work. Well, I had 2 precancerous polyps. And if I wouldn't have gotten those tests early, it would have just continued to build and build and build. And so we are definitely on the proactive side. But for myself, if I wasn't in the fire service, I wouldn't have hearing aids. And my doctor said there is no way I would have those precancerous polyps in there. So this is a large issue that we're dealing with. And so we're trying to get early in front of you. And that's why we're here in August to start this conversation versus coming in December when your agenda is here. And like the governor's office said, I never would have thought 25 years ago that I was carrying a carcinogen in my turnouts. And every day I go to work, I'm putting something on our rig that it has known carcinogens in there. We're working with our international to try and solve that. It's a very complex issue because it helps not burn up and keeps us safe, and yet it gives us cancer at the same time. And so that's kind of a high level overview. We're waiting for Dr. Wu, is not quite on here, but I want to turn it over to Mike Caven, who will be able to expand with his.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and my committee members. My name is Mike Caven. I've been a firefighter in Oregon for 24 years. I currently serve as the fire chief in one of Oregon's largest fire departments, but I'm here representing my experience as a firefighter with non-presumptive cancer. Last year, I joined that club as a union officer for years, that I helped many people navigate our system with presumptive cancers. And most of the time, those firefighters, their families, their financial security was taken care of because their cancers had been studied and listed in that short list of legislation available in Oregon. When it became my turn, I was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer that is biologically related to leukemia. It begins in the same bone marrow cells, involves many of the same disease pathways, but because it doesn't have the word leukemia in it, I have to prove my case. And I knew that from day one, having been through this system and helped people. It meant I needed to prove that 24 years of firefighting was the major contributing cause. My treating hematologist, a respected expert researcher in blood cancers, concluded that firefighting was in fact the majority contributing cause of my disease. But I also knew that wasn't going to be good enough. So while I was learning to live with cancer, how to pay for my treatment, and spend time becoming an amateur researcher, I compiled 17 pages of scientific literature documents on the carcinogens related to firefighting exposures, how those chemicals penetrate our protective equipment, and then cause DNA damage and mutations that ultimately lead to blood cancers. Even researching military burn pit studies have shown distinctly that those same exposures do in fact cause the same type of cancer that I have. When I met with an independent medical examiner, I brought that research with me and was told they're not allowed to accept it. That moment said everything, and it was that I had to prove my case, but the system wasn't required to consider the evidence that I gathered when deciding whether or not to deny it. My opportunity to prove causation in the case isn't going to be in front of a medical expert. It will happen later this year in front of a judge. I'm also not alone in my own organization. There are 3 of us with biologically related cancers, all who served in an intense burning environment in our training division within 3 years, all diagnosed with these cancers within the last 3 years. But that cancer cluster does not legally weigh into a requirement that I have to prove individual causation. It's a footnote that those folks that I worked alongside, but it doesn't change how the law requires me to address this cancer exposure. When I was researching, I looked for firefighters across our country, and I found that had this rare blood cancer. But what I also found is everyone I came across was in a state who had already changed to a cancer for all presumption. So they didn't have good advice. How do you fight this? Where do you go from here? What did you use? California figured it out nearly 30 years ago. And it was because occupational cancers alone are inherently rare. Small cohorts means less to study, and so less likely to get a big moniker that says this exactly caused cancer. But they recognize that, again, decades before the IARC came out and said that this is a group 1 carcinogen, that it's most likely, and the lack of distinct scientific evidence does not distinguish the lack of causation. So I hope that Oregon can join the other states, including but not limited to California and Alabama, Kansas, Louisiana, Ohio, New Jersey, Rhode Island, who moved beyond cancer lists to cancer for all. I'm not here to tell you the system's rigged, but I will tell you the deck is stacked against the firefighter. Right now, Oregon's law creates winners and losers based on the name of the cancer instead of the exposures that cause it. 2 firefighters can spend decades standing side by side, absorbing the same smoke, carcinogens, yet one receives benefits and one doesn't based on the specific mutation in their diagnosis. We can continue to add them one at a time and go through this process multiple times, or we can take it in one shot and say, like many other states, yes, all cancers are carcinogenic for firefighters. Expanding presumption does not prevent our employers from challenging certain cases, does not strip their rights away. It simply shifts the burden of proof away from the firefighter who's battling cancer and onto the system that has the resources to investigate that. But certainly appreciate having my own case treated as presumptive and give my family peace of mind, but I'm not here for my case. I don't want any other firefighter diagnosed with cancer or rare occupational cancer in Oregon to have to fight cancer and the system at the same time. So I really appreciate your time and hearing my experience as a firefighter with cancer.
And I just want to emphasize too, when Chief Caven, when he talked about his coworkers, the 3 that he has were all assigned to the training division at the exact same time. And so and they are 3 rare cancers. And for me, I'm simple. I know I'm not a doctor. I don't have initials all behind my name, but it seems pretty simple to think that those cases are related to the causation of work. Another part that I want to go while we're waiting for Dr. Wu to jump on is the emotional toll that it takes on the firefighter. So as Chief Caven is fighting for his life, fighting for these type of cancers, from what we hear, we talk to people all over the state, and I'll look at them and they'll have little cuts right where their thyroid is. And it's like, the last thing I need to do while I'm trying to take care of my family and take care of my health is also be fighting for the claims that I do have. And so next we have Dr. Wu, but Dr. Wu, are you online by chance? Okay, so I can submit his testimony. He is the International Association of Firefighters epidemiologist doctor. He handles all of our worker comp. And he was going to go into the science of the presumption, the reason that we need to move towards all cancers in Oregon. And it doesn't look like he's available right now. He was remoting in from our conference in Texas. And so I would open up any questions that you have now. The science stuff I was holding for Dr. Wu to be able to answer, but in generalities, would open any questions that you might have for me or Mike.
Yeah, happy to field some questions. I don't see any hands raised yet. No questions from folks. Oh, Sarah?
Thank you, Co-Chair Strickland, and thank you for the testimony today. I have a question. Have employers been engaged in this process and this thought? And what does it look like for that collaborative approach?
Repeat the question, sorry.
Can you, Sarah, can we turn the volume, or are we able to
No.
have Sarah repeat your question?
I'll jump on now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Is that better? Okay, so my question is, have employers been engaged in this process and this collaboration? And what is the thought from their perspective?
Yeah, so we've worked with the Oregon State for the Fire Chiefs Association. So if you look at a lot of those are, you know, Clackamas Fire that have their own fire districts. We are engaged actively with conversations with them. They have not came out with a position on it. We have not had open discussions with the League of Oregon Cities or those others on this process yet.
Thank you. I do see Ryan has a question, but I do see that Dr. Wu has joined the chat and has come off mute. Ryan, would you like, I see your hand down. Maybe you want them to
Yeah.
go first. Okay.
Yeah, we'll let the doctor go first. I'll follow up. Absolutely.
Perfect. Dr. Wu, please feel free to chime in.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
And I apologize for not joining earlier, but I was having technical difficulties in this Texas hotel where I'm at currently. So I'll get started now. So good morning to everybody that's present, committee members and everybody else. My name is Dan Wu, and I'm testifying in support of expanding presumptive cancer coverage for Oregon firefighters. I currently serve as the Chief Medical Officer for the International Association of Firefighters, and as such, I'm responsible for the health and medical well-being of nearly 370,000 professional firefighters across all of the US and Canada. I'm also in my 41st year as an emergency first responder with a distinguished 30-year career as a professional firefighter, EMS paramedic, and scuba rescue diver. In the fire service, I work for the 6th largest fire rescue and EMS provider in the nation and was the top-ranked candidate in my department's extremely competitive Chief Fire Officer promotional process during my very first eligible year. Subsequently, I was promoted to the rank of Division Chief in charge of fire rescue and EMS operations for half of the most populated county in Florida. In addition, I'm also a 34-year veteran and founding member of an elite and one of the most recognized search and rescue teams in the world, which is FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Florida Task Force 1. In that capacity, I'm a senior disaster physician and medical team manager and have responded to multiple major disasters in both the US and abroad. My mission response to the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks led to the honor of being recognized as one of the founding members of the US Department of Homeland Security. Moreover, I'm a triple board certified medical doctor and epidemiologist with a master's degree in public health. The most relevant board certification for this setting is in preventive medicine and public health, which trains physicians in population medicine. Epidemiology is the specialty that identifies, hypothesizes, designs, researches, evaluates, interprets, and develops recommendations related to the incidence, prevalence, and associated trends in morbidity and mortality of diseases in populations. Naturally, I specialize in the emergency first responder subpopulation. Professionally, I have served in and held several ranks, titles, and positions that are directly and indirectly related to the public health, safety, and well-being of firefighters. This includes evaluating their occupational exposures and consequential work-related diseases. Given my experience and expertise, I'm hopeful that my testimony today will be insightful and assist all of you to more clearly elucidate the correlation between firefighters' workplace exposures during both emergency and routine work to their increased risk in incidence and prevalence for all forms of cancers. As the highest medical executive for the largest firefighter organization in the world, I'm appearing before you today to bridge a critical gap between clinical oncologic pathology and your state's current presumptive legislative state. My duties include investigating negative health outcomes afflicting firefighters and to base my professional medical opinions on the reasonable degree of medical certainty standard. To that end, it is my opinion, within said reasonable degree of medical certainty, that the state of Oregon is currently experiencing a wide gap between the occupationally related malignancies that arise among firefighters and the presumptive coverage it recognizes for them. Thus, Oregon's current presumptive legislation should be amended to recognize all cancers arising out of and in the course of employment as a firefighter as a rebuttable presumption. Doing so would place Oregon in line with other jurisdictions as a leader in the nation with respect to ensuring that its firefighters attain just benefits and entitlements for work-related malignancies already proven by science to arise from exposures related to their occupation. Currently, the adjudicative process in Oregon fails to reflect the principles of general carcinogenesis among firefighters, many of which are known to originate from genetic and epigenetic alterations occurring from toxic fireground exposures. This shortcoming has led to many Oregon firefighters currently being trapped in protracted disputes regarding the specific organ or anatomy of cancer origin, as well as to the specific wording, the types and subtypes of their cancers were given during diagnosis. It's time for Oregon to shift the burden of proof where it belongs, on the employer, and away from sick and dying firefighters. Said system will acknowledge what science has evidence to be clear and convincing evidence. That is, the occupation of firefighters is inextricably linked to carcinogenesis. The model which exists currently in Oregon and in other states where cancers are periodically added to the relevant presumptive statutes for firefighters is reactive, and thus disadvantageous, as it limits the limit for expansion of these presumptive laws to only when the legislative sessions are occurring. This leads to long, drawn-out bureaucratic adjudicative processes for firefighter cancer claims in the interim, often leading to a resolution only after the firefighter has experienced medical bankruptcy or has succumbed to the illness. The pattern for firefighters working exposures that result in cancers is consistent and irrefutable when the corrected biostatistical metrics are implemented. Unfortunately, most of these cancers occur and are studied too infrequently to be significant in epidemiological conclusions. It is only when individual studies are eventually combined during meta-analytic processes that they provide rationale for broader general causation determinations. One of the best examples on this point comes from Grace LeMasters and colleagues, who in 2006 published a meta-analysis of 32 lower power studies, which individually carried limited biostatistical weight, but collectively, once meta-analyzed, had much higher biostatistical power and yielded important information about the increased risk in incidence and prevalence of several cancers in firefighters. Notwithstanding, performing meta-analysis can be tediously slow and may be unnecessary in light of the recently discovered mechanistic carcinogenic evidence from the World Health Organization International Agency for Research on Cancer, known as IARC, that supports that firefighters who are diagnosed with any form of cancer are more likely than not to have sustained these cancers from their workplace exposures. Since Oregon's legislature enacted its list of firefighter presumptive cancers, IARC reclassified in 2022 the occupation of firefighting as a Group 1 known human carcinogen. This now signifies that firefighter is no longer merely a job title, but a source of known human carcinogenesis. This reclassification was rooted in 5 mechanistic characteristics of general carcinogenesis, by which firefighting compromises the human immunologic system. These are genotoxicity, epigenetic alterations, oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, and modulated receptor-mediated effects. It is important to note here that IARC only required 1 of the 10 existing mechanistic processes to be present to corroborate this positivity. And in the case of firefighting, not 1, but 5 of these mechanistic characteristics were positively identified. And because the mechanisms are systemic and our bodies are not compartmentalized anatomical regions, a toxin does not selectively choose a specific organ. Rather, it circulates throughout the entire body, poisoning that entire body, not just an organ. And even though some carcinogens may have been attributed to have an affinity for certain organs, the reality is that these studies may have been limited by their research aims or funding, and as such may not be definitive. This effectively makes site-specific cancer lists medically obsolete when faced with systemic chemical exposures that circulate throughout the entire bodies of firefighters. For example, a landmark 2025 study by Furlong and colleagues identified genetic instability and autoimmune dysfunction among firefighters caused by PFAS and other toxic exposures. This research links firefighting to 14 specific cancers, many of which are currently not covered under Oregon's existing presumptive law. It is also well understood by researchers that firefighters, because of the emergency nature of our work, are a very difficult subpopulation to study accurately. As such, the true risk for cancer among firefighters is often underestimated. Oftentimes, legislators are mostly presented with epidemiological data from these suboptimal studies that suggest a low power of association for certain firefighter cancer. However, as an epidemiologist and medical doctor, I, as do many of my colleagues, recognize the existence of statistical noise that may mask the true causal risk factors within data sets. Current studies are often biased toward the null, meaning the outcome may be due to chance, because of the healthy worker effect, and also because most mortality studies rely on each individual state's death certificates and register-based data that may be lacking important information. Firefighter studies are also plagued with significant ascertainment and survival biases, which altogether compound the problem of losing firefighter-specific evidence to, as well as assigning firefighter-specific risk increases to the general population, therefore diluting the available firefighter evidence. As for death certificates, the completion emphasizes timeliness, often within 24 hours. We're all taught that in medical school. And while on the one hand, this is much helpful to assist grieving families, on the other, it leads to information imprecision and inaccuracies that frequently lead to misclassification and non-specific ICD diagnostic coding. Dr. Simitiki, a preeminent expert in occupational carcinogens, notes that previous research relied on crude exposure assessment models, which are hard-pressed to detect the actual risk. That is why a dynamic approach to causation is now contemporarily used, because it incorporates theories of causation that can account for the limitations of some research. One such tool is the Rothman's causal pie model, where a disease is the result of various component slices. And when evaluating firefighters, we find that typically we have lower rates of tobacco use and higher fitness levels than the general population. So when these personal lifestyle slices are removed, the remaining occupational and other job-related exposures naturally become larger and more significant in order to fill the voids of this pie of causation. This is supported by the 2025 Descapa and colleagues study entitled Work, Exposome, and Related Disorders of Firefighters, which concluded that occupational exposures are the greatest contributors to cancer in firefighters compared to risk factors. Furthermore, we have the Russell-Williamson thesis, which provides a framework for evidence pluralism, allowing us to combine statistical correlations with the qualitative mechanistic evidence already identified by IARC. So together, these models allow for the more likely than not threshold to be met regarding employment as a firefighter to be causative of all cancers. Expanding presumptive coverage is a matter of equitability and modernization. By moving to an all-cancer model, Oregon would join a growing international consensus of jurisdictions that prioritize firefighter health over bureaucratic convenience, including Louisiana, Ohio, California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Oklahoma, as well as the Canadian provinces of British Columbia, Manitoba, and the Northwest Territories, all of which have completed or are in the process of reviewing the transition to an all-cancer model. As an example, Louisiana's legislation reads, because of exposure to heat, smoke, and fumes or carcinogenic, poisonous, toxic, or chemical substances, when a firefighter has developed cancer, the cancer shall be classified as an occupational disease or infirmity connected with the duties of a firefighter. The disease or infirmity shall be presumed to have been caused by or to have resulted from the work performed. Thus, proceeding to an all-cancer model is in line with the following evidence. Systemic carcinogenic mechanistic evidence has been proven by IARC, and through these pathophysiological processes, toxins attack the entire body, making site-specific lists of cancer inaccurate and imprecise, altogether impractical. The work exposome is the primary driver of these illnesses, as firefighters lack many of the traditional lifestyle risk factors affecting the general population. And equitability demands that we stop picking winners and losers among those exposed to the same carcinogens. An example of this point will follow. As to the cost, when one considers the cost benefit from reduced appeals hearings associated with firefighters' cancer claims. Sorry. As to the costs, when one considers the cost benefit from reduced appeals hearings associated with firefighter cancer claims appeals, the resultant increase in costs would be marginal, and it would allow for just and equitable entitlements for firefighters suffering from occupationally acquired cancers. And this is of the utmost importance, as many firefighters pass away before their claim approvals are decided. They die without the recognition that their illness was a result of their sworn duties and the fulfillment of their oath as a firefighter, not knowing if their families will have the support necessary to retain their home and make ends meet after they're gone. I have personally seen firefighter families become destitute after the passing of their firefighter provider, only for this to be rectified on appeal, oftentimes after years or decades of those families enduring this economic devastation that an erroneous administrative ruling gave them. And this underscores another point. Far too often, the evidentiary onus when placed on firefighters is far too high to allow for the fair and equitable adjudication of their claims. This is because they can only rely on the medical opinions of their treating practitioners, who oftentimes neither have the time nor are experts on firefighter occupational medicine, fire service epidemiology, or the standards of causation used in worker compensation schemes in their states of practice, so they can provide a fully informed opinion. This is because firefighters are unlikely to have access to medical experts, and when they do, most lack the financial means to retain them. A current internet search yielded a market rate for medical experts to range between $500 and $2,500 per hour. In summary, listing presumptive firefighting cancers individually is reactive. This is inappropriate and impractical from a legislative standpoint because firefighters have to wait until your legislation is in session before any corrective action can be pursued. Current research describes the mechanistic pro-oncogenic alterations that occur from firefighting exposures for all cancers. Genetic and epigenetic alterations cause many forms of rare cancers, which are difficult to recreate through high-power epidemiological studies due to the small sample size firefighters represent. In this setting, traditional dose-response endpoint studies become ill-suited as the metric to establish presumptive causation. A common epidemiological expression applies here. Rare diseases occur rarely, so they are rarely studied, and that's because they are rarely funded. Notice that the operative word in this expression is funding. To contest the denials of their cancer claims, firefighters require well-nuanced medical experts, which carry honoraria that is out of reach to most firefighters. Conversely, well-funded insurances with a financial interest to deny cases have these medical experts pre-identified and readily available, oftentimes on retainer. Clearly, this creates an unfair motivation advantage for the latter. Once the specific causation has been established at appeal, jurisdictions, including Oregon, consistently rule in favor of firefighters. This specific causation must now be applied broadly to support coverage for all cancers in firefighters. Many other jurisdictions do or are proposing coverage for all cancers, any type of cancer, or any cancer acquired by those who have served as a firefighter. If the same occupational exposure can lead to a multitude of different cancers, the equitable approach is to allow coverage for all such cancers. I close with an example of this problem. Your current Oregon statute contains a significant blind spot regarding hematopoietic, that is blood-based cancers. Your law lists only 3 forms of blood cancers: multiple myeloma, leukemia, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These 3 type-specific blood cancers are woefully inaccurate with respect to the pathological reality of how blood cancers and their pre-disease states, many of which are considered cancers in their own right, manifest. All blood cancers originate in the stem cells of the bone marrow. Research has shown that occupational toxic exposure causes mutations. This mutation is directly linked to benzene and volatile organic compounds, both known carcinogens and both known to be heavily encountered on the fire ground. As you have heard from Eugene, Oregon Fire Chief Michael Caven, who's currently battling essential thrombocythemia, he worked in the training division along with 2 other colleagues, one who was diagnosed with polycythemia vera and the other with acute myeloblastic anemia, leukemia. Under your current law, Chief Caven and his colleague with polycythemia vera are being denied benefits, while the one with acute myeloblastic leukemia is being covered simply because leukemia happened to be noted in your legislation. This one example alone underscores how your current system creates winners and losers based solely on what specific cancers were included in your legislative language at the time, even for cancers with pathological relatedness and origination from the same stem cell mutation process. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today and can answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. I know Ryan had his hand up, but I know that that was a lot of information to process. So happy to take your question now, Ryan, or give everybody a few seconds to process. One thing I would flag before kicking to Ryan, if you could have written testimony submitted as well. I know that that really helps this group kind of be able to digest information, prepare follow-up questions, and be kind of able to constructively engage in that. So I believe that you all will be submitting written as well, but if not, I think that that would be helpful. But happy to kick it to Ryan, and then I see Sarah has a hand up as well.
Thank you, Co-Chair Priest. Real quick, I have more of a comment, but really quickly want to recognize your guys' testimony. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. Really appreciate you guys coming out and showing up for our firefighters. My comment basically is, as we review these presumptions, especially around PFAS, that kind of stuff, I would really like to explore subrogation in these types of cases and what that looks like, maybe towards those manufacturers of those PFAS and those kind of things. Just wanted to flag that for the group. I think it would be lucrative of us to dive into that. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Sarah?
Thank you, Co-Chair. Strickland, more of a comment as well. Really just looking for visuals would be super helpful. Along with testimony, you talked a lot about some charting and pie charts and pulling out different human factors. That would be really great to see what that looks like in a visual setting, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the ask would be for kind of some written summary, some follow-ups. I know Emily probably would like to chase down some of the studies there as well, as much as the rest of us. I know I always like case citations when there's legal stuff that's presented, so I can take a look myself. But yeah, really want to appreciate, echo Ryan's comment on appreciating the service that your members provide in keeping us all safe and fighting the fires. I know that we've had staff members for our council that have been evacuated from Spokane and the horror that they're dealing with up there. So really want to respect that, appreciate that, and appreciate the kind of volume of information that you brought before us to help us dip a toe into understanding the remarkably complex intersection of everything that we're dealing with here. I know that we talk in our presentations to our what MLAC does as sort of exactly this kind of issue where you have this hyper complex intersection of a bunch of different stakeholders in a bunch of different ways that have these ripple effects throughout the community, as was mentioned with the impacts on family members that survive these firefighters, the impacts on data and the decisions that are made throughout that process of issuing a death certificate and the kind of urgency that you need that, but then you're not able to do the work and the research that would provide potentially better scientific data for a broader analysis of what's going on. So I think that really stuck with me, along with a few other things, as kind of a very interesting contextualization of the presentation here. So do really appreciate that. Other questions from folks?
Well, thank you to the committee for allowing us to come and spend time. I do want to also mention that our plan is to come back in front of the committee, and we are thinking about trying to get onto your October schedule. So we'll be ready to answer any questions. I'll definitely have Dr. Wu, please put that on your calendar because I can't answer a lot of those in-depth medical ones that he would be able to do, but we'll be happy to continue working with the committee. Appreciate your time working on this important issue for the firefighters of Oregon.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. We look forward to continued engagement. And I see next up, division presentation, DCBS's Department of Financial Regulation. Looks like we have Alex Cheng, Deputy Administrator.
Good.
Or Eric.
Yeah, good morning. I don't know that Alex is going to be able to make the call, so I'll go ahead and fill in his stead. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Eric Bredesen. I am the Property and Casualty Product Regulation Manager for the Division of Financial Regulation. And today's presentation is really just a very brief overview of what DFR does and how we intersect with WCD and that sort of information. But as we go through the slides, it'll be very much a 40,000 foot level, and it may drive some questions, but we'll go ahead and get started here. Next slide, please. So yeah, like I said, it's a snapshot of what DFR does and some of the functions that we perform. There's a little discussion on how we interact with this committee, and then how we interact with workers' compensation insurers. And the goal is always to maintain a stable, fair, and accessible insurance market for all Oregonians. The two big things we focus on at all times and in everything we do is maintaining or doing the best we can to maintain both accessibility and affordability to insurance products for consumers, and for, in this case, it would be employers as well. So next slide, please. So some of the things that we do to protect Oregon's access to fair and reliable financial services is we have several departments that focus on insurance market regulation and oversight. We have compliance units, we have enforcement units, we have product regulation, which is what I manage, where we review all of the forms and rates that are being filed by insurers to make sure that they comply and they're fair, that sort of thing. We have full outreach and education departments and advocacy that serve pretty much anybody that has a complaint regarding an insurance situation. We have someone who attacks that and helps and provides a resource. And then again, it's the affordability and accessibility of insurance coverage. That's kind of our overarching driving force, is to do the activities and to make sure that the market is such that people can afford to be in it and have access to choices and, or at a minimum, some coverage in all of the areas of insurance. The broader scope of what DFR does, it's not just insurance. We also regulate banks, credit unions, mortgages, securities, consumer finance, and so on. So it's you know, both insurance and the financial world. And in the past, there were, I think, two different divisions, and they've been combined for quite a while now. But so Commissioner Keene has quite a spread of what, you know, his division is responsible for. He's both the administrator of DFR and the insurance commissioner in this case. So you know, he's got quite the spread of things that we regulate. Next slide, please. Okay, so oversight and regulation, we have a very, the term used, strong foundation. We do that in a lot of ways in a lot of areas. We license insurance companies and producers, agents, TPAs, MGAs, et cetera, pharmacy representatives. We license all of them and confirm that they have the credentials and qualifications to be licensed. We monitor financial solvency of insurance companies, and my colleague Paul will talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes. My group is product regulation, where we review all of the filings that are made by insurance companies. where we review every form, every policy, whatever new product they want to file and sell in Oregon. We review every word of it to make sure that it complies and fits, within the product standards that are set forth. And then rates, we have, several actuaries on staff who review all of the rate filings to make sure that they're justified and supported and actuarially sound. So we have full oversight of those processes. We help coordinate the assigned risk carrier bid and selecting of the service carriers. Right now, there are three that happens now, and we'll get into this a little bit more later. But right now, there are three servicing carriers for the assigned risk pool, and that goes up every 3 years now. It used to be two, but it's three now. We support and the next couple of bullet points kind of blend together, but we support the pure premium rate making, reviewing and approving the annual loss cost and assigned risk rate filing that's submitted by NCCI. We're actually currently in that process now, and we'll get into that a little bit more later as well. We have participating members in ORAC with NCCI and workers' comp stakeholders to review and update the classification rating plan as needed. We approve the expense load for voluntary market insurers, and then we investigate insurer misconduct and we take enforcement action where it's appropriate. So we have, several departments that focus to some degree on insurance company behavior or activity in the market to confirm that it's compliant and it's not creating consumer harm. And then we have steps to those processes where it can escalate as necessary. Next slide, please. So how this might relate to the workers' comp language, it might make a little more sense, is, we protect both employers and workers. And for employers, it's by preserving a competitive insurance marketplace. And that means a lot of different things, but it's making sure that the pricing is correct and that there are options for employers to choose from. We have the financial oversight of insurers, which, again, Paul will talk about in a little while. Again, insurance product and rates review to make sure they're compliant and justified. Consumer assistance and education, and then the market conduct. For workers, it's making sure that the insurance companies that are having claims filed against them are processing and paying claims appropriately, and that they're financially solvent enough to do so. We do have some claims practices oversight as well. Some of that leans more towards WCD, but we do have some oversight in this area. Again, the consumer advocacy resources that are available to any injured worker that might have a complaint, or employer that might have a complaint or an issue they need have some questions about, we can help answer those. And then, ideally, the regulatory oversight helps support, all Oregonians' confidence in the system, knowing that there's checks and balances in place to make sure that they're being treated fairly and there's not unfair discrimination built into the system. So next slide, please. This is an interesting one. I think the interaction with MLAC and DFR used to be a little bit more robust. It maybe has lessened to some degree of late, but it's somewhat the way that I at least view it is that we're a willing partner and resource as it applies to any insurance related information in the state of Oregon. We provide regulatory guidance and expertise as requested or on an ad hoc basis. We share insurance market information. We are constantly gathering data, in a 100 different ways, and it's constantly building, so we can provide some information potentially on trending and things like that might help move some decisions in one direction or the other. We support discussion on workers' compensation policy. We are brought into some of those discussions where it makes sense to do so as it applies to the insurance code and things like that. We're a support system for when WCD is doing some of that work. we're active participant in rulemaking and legislative activity. Again, that's mostly driven by WCD when it's related to workers' comp, but we serve as a participant and resource as necessary and as requested, and then we coordinate with other stakeholders. Next slide, please. So Paul, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you for just a minute.
Sorry, I accidentally clicked. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I accidentally clicked the pencil and it was trying to put some things up there. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Paul Throckmorton, and I am the chief analyst in the insurance institution division of DFR. And so one of my roles is to work with companies as they're getting authorized or licensed in the state of Oregon. So building on what Eric was mentioning earlier, the protections that he discussed, this is an important step that we do. Any insurer who wants to write workers' compensation insurance in the state of Oregon must apply and be authorized to write to write that business in Oregon. And during the application process, we really look at all aspects of the applicant. We look at their financial strength, which includes a business plan, their financial projections, kind of where are they going to be writing, how much are they planning on writing. We look at their minimum capital requirements based on statute. Workers' comp company, currently the minimum capital requirement is $5 million. There are security deposits that are held also to guarantee performance. Those are calculated annually and adjusted based on an annual filing that they make with the division. And it's critical that the companies have sufficient capital or access to the capital to cover projected and actual costs. And so part of that is we need to understand not just the company, but if it's a member of a holding company group, we need to understand their financial health and any access that they may have to capital, any liabilities they have. So it's a pretty comprehensive process we go through. We also do the regulatory code, and we review regulatory code and compliance. We have detailed procedures that we follow to ensure that they're in compliance with not only Oregon statute, but also the National Association of Insurance Commissioner guidance, which also helps us to ensure that the companies are performing and in good condition to be in our marketplace. Corporate governance is also something we look at. Corporate governance, we really like to see a good tone at the top from those who are running the company. And in order to do that, they really have to know, they have to have the appropriate background and experience to operate a workers' compensation company. So those are other things we look at. Licensing requirements in general, our website, we have on our website a spot where interested parties can go and they can learn about the licensing requirements. And we get questions from interested parties even before they apply, where they ask us, they go through some of those licensing requirements and get information up front on what they might need or what we might look at. And then we also work with, during that initial evaluation, we also work with the market conduct team, will assist us. They're the team that reviews how the company behaves in the market. So they'll look at not just the company, but also the group associated with the company to make sure that there hasn't been problematic behavior in the market that would indicate that they might not be a good fit for us. So, and then after we're done, after that initial application process, if the application's approved, and then then they receive a certificate of authority, they're licensed with us. And then we perform ongoing surveillance, financial surveillance of them, of each company, and they're required to file certain documents with us by statute and by rule. And then we review those things and we monitor the things that I've already discussed, in addition to just ongoing issues or concerns that may pop up. Next slide, and I'll turn it back over to Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So this slide really is more related to kind of a point that might be something one would like to make on this slide is there is a slight delineation between kind of what DFR, how DFR views the workers' comp system as opposed to how WCD does, but there is some blending and certainly some crossover in those worlds. But DFR really just kind of focuses on insurance companies and insurance producers, whereas WCD focuses on some work with insurers on the claims activity, of course, but mostly on employers and injured workers. So, if you're wanting to somehow form some differences around what our role is, that's probably a kind of a foundational way to look at it. But WCD, they ensure the administration of statutes and rules of workers' comp. They're focused on employer compliance, claims handling, delivery of benefits, and the rest of the bullet points you can see there. But DFR focuses on the insurance side of the house, making sure that the companies who are providing workers' comp insurance remain compliant and financially solvent. And we do dabble in some of the claims stuff, but that's really not most of the focus. A lot of that comes through market conduct and potentially just advocacy when we touch on those worlds. So next slide, please. So the assigned risk market, I'm sure you're familiar with what that is, but DFR helps coordinate the selection of Oregon's assigned risk service carriers. I had mentioned this in a previous slide, and this is a little bit more meat on this. So we conduct the selection process and select the servicing carriers. NCCI actually, I think, does the RFP and contracts, but ultimately DFR is the selecting body on who will receive the bid or win the bid and at what percentage they receive as of the assigned risk pool. We will help evaluate the proposals and coordinate with any relevant stakeholders to help make that decision. And what this does is helps ensure that employers who are unable to obtain voluntary market coverage have access to workers' comp insurance through an assigned risk carrier. This happens every 3 years now. It used to be every 2 years. Right now, again, there's 3 carriers that handle the entire assigned risk pool at this point. I think in years past there was as many as 4, but it's consistently 3 now. Next slide, please. Pure premium rate making. This is one that I'll be transparent. I planted a ringer in the audience in case I have questions about this, but it's where we talked about this also first a few slides ago, but this is the assigned risk rates. DFR collaborates with WCD, NCCI, and any stakeholders to help develop the pure premium rates. We review the filings, and actually we're in that process now where NCCI will file those through DFR. Our actuaries will review the filings, proceed with any questions they might have, and solve any issues that need to be, and then ultimately approve those rates moving forward for NCCI and for the state. We provide the actuarial and regulatory expertise, and we have several meetings ahead of the filing, typically just to kind of discuss, the stages of it and how it's starting to play out, which are very helpful in moving it along once it's actually filed. As with all rates, it's our role in DFR to confirm that the rates being requested are actuarially supported and comply with all of the Oregon statutes and administrative rules. It's no different than any other filing, but it's a pretty important one that happens. So next slide, please. So I do think Alex was able to join us after it already started. So Alex Chang is the Deputy Administrator for Division of Financial Regulation. And this is just our contacts if you wanted to connect with us. And I guess we can move to questions at this point if there are any.
Great, thank you for that. I think that was a very helpful presentation and kind of helping us understand the siloing of DFR under DCBS and the connection within work comp. I know that we talked about having the kind of regulator presentation when we did the presentations about sort of the injured worker perspective, the employer perspective, an insurer perspective, and then have sort of like regulatorily what's going on as well. So I think this I know helped me kind of understand the intersection there. So really appreciate that. Happy to field any other questions. And I do see Deputy Administrator Chang has come on as well. So welcome. Good to have you. Not seeing any questions, but thank you for the contact information as well. I know that's very helpful for stakeholders to have that kind of end panel of where to go for more information. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Last on the agenda, I see upcoming meetings notice. Terry, feel free to interrupt if I am saying anything I ought not, but just reading off the upcoming meetings, September 3rd, 10 to noon. Looks like we will be in the Oregon OSHA training room on the first floor with the address listed in Tigard there.
And that is in person.
Yep. In person.
Yes.
And then the next two meetings, one October 1st, 10 to noon, listed as a virtual. Obviously, as we have Sarah in the room, folks are welcome, but virtual is kind of what we're anticipating. And then November 5th, 10 to noon, another virtual meeting. So really appreciate all of the, I felt like this was a good informational meeting. We had tons of kind of dense, disparate topics that did all kind of connect in a way. So really appreciate that. Appreciate the patience and engagement from stakeholders and board member MLAC members as well. And look forward to seeing everyone on September 3rd. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.